All right, so welcome everybody. My name is Manisha. I'm the Director of Health Professions Advising. And today, day one of interview week, we're going to be talking about preparing for your interview. So first, congratulations for being an applicant and making it through all the primaries and starting on your secondaries. So I know it's been tough and challenging the last few months, but you know, you're all doing great. So I want to ask you, just to kind of get started, why do you think schools interview? Why do you think that's important when they've already read your application? What do you think they're interviewing for?
Is it to make sure there's no like red flags in your personality?
Okay, that could be a piece of it. How you respond to situations. Yeah, Meredith, thank you. To see who you really are and personality. So up to now, schools have met you, but you're still a pretty flat profile. It's everything that you put in writing. And they're starting to form a picture of you, but like I said, still a very flat profile. So by meeting you, they're trying to understand, you know, how well you understand your motivations, how well you understand the reason you applied for this school, how well you understand, why you'd be a good fit, and how you communicate. So they're trying to start imagining what the entire class looks like. We're just going to use 100 as an average number, but what 100 students look like at their school and how you could strengthen and support each other. But at the end of the day, even after reading, it's still pretty flat. So they want to get to know you better. So from that, just like you've been doing all along, it's really important for you to be able to discuss what value you bring to the field you intend to apply to. What do you offer? What competencies or attributes have you developed? Now you see these words up here. This is really from AAMC, but this applies across to a board to any health field that you would be going for. So how are you portraying this when you've written your application, but now it continues? How are you continuing to portray these competencies and attributes in the verbal component of your application, the interview? So always kind of have this in the back of your mind, but also pair that with what value do I bring to the school and to the field and as a future med dent vet student. I just put this up for fun, but it's like I got the interview and now what, right? The excitement kicks in, and then, oh no, what do I need to tell them? How do I plan for this? So that's what today's all about, to kind of alleviate some of that stress, that anxiety, but also helping you maintain that excitement and enthusiasm. So I'd asked you about this, but this is what we're really looking at in terms of why schools are interviewing you. They want to know who you really are, as some of you have commented in the chat. Evaluate your personality, your maturity, and self-awareness. Your readiness for both the profession and for being a graduate level student. So up to now, your grades, your writing, and your scores got you to today. Moving forward, it's how you portray yourself, which again can be very stressful. And the whole goal is, how do I manage that? And how do I best prepare myself? But in evaluating you, the schools are going to be looking at your interpersonal skills, how you communicate. Are you able to speak to both your strengths and areas of development, and how you answer ethical related questions? So at the end of the day, it's still going to be about who you are and how you fit with a specific school. Sometimes it's hard to hear. A perfectly strong candidate may not get in for no other reason than a school might be interviewing double or triple the number of seats they actually have. So if they have 100 seats, they easily may be interviewing 300 or 400 people to fit those 100 seats. And it's, again, they're trying to imagine and picture what the entire class looks like. And that's hard. That's hard because you can be a very strong applicant, and it's making it through this. But again, the point of this week is to help you really be able to speak to all of these pieces to show a school that, yes, I'm ready. I have the maturity. I have the competencies to be successful in both in school and through the profession. So let's talk about some of the basics. Your interview day is going to be planned by the school. Everyone's going to have the same experience, typically in the same order if possible. I know with virtual interviews, sometimes the order gets rearranged, but the school plans everything and will let you know. Sometimes they might let you know in advance. Other times you may be finding out a day or two before your interview, the more detailed components. Now, you're going to hear me say this one and only one time. Up to now, if you've worked with me or if you worked with anyone at HPA, we are very much against Reddit Student Doctor Network. Those inspire anxiety and not necessarily are the most informative. This is the one time when you're planning for your interview. I'm going to say it's okay to go with laser focus. Go into SDN, find out what your interview day is going to be, and then shut it down. They do actually do a pretty decent job sometimes of showcasing what the interview day could look like. And again, the goal of that is to know what you're walking into and alleviate some of that anxiety. But I'm gonna ask of you is don't go down the rabbit holes of what else are people saying. That's not the point of going onto SDN. We're not trying to increase this anxiety, but again, stay focused on what does my day look like. You could potentially be interviewed by a faculty or a current student, and there might be a variety of formats. So I want to know, and again, throughout this week, we're going to talk more about each one. The more traditional interviews are going to be that one-on-one experience. It's you and an interviewer, you and the faculty, you and admissions, you and the professional student. A panel or small group. Panel meaning several people may be interviewing you. Group, you are one of several candidates being interviewed. Now, those two can be mixed together where a panel may also be interviewing a group of candidates. So again, different experiences or pre-recorded now. We're seeing that as well, or asynchronous, which is Kira. So if you're applying to any medical schools that require Kira, that's another format. It's pre-recorded. The questions are thrown at you. You answer them, you finish your recording, it goes straight to the school. Now, in terms of what the interviewer knows about you ahead of time, it can be open, meaning the interviewer has had the opportunity to review your application, and blind, meaning the interviewer knows nothing about you beyond the school has offered you an interview. Again, if you get an interview, congratulations. That's a huge step. Whatever you wrote has already interested the school and they want to meet you to really kind of flesh out who you are. And with the open interview, YSA has had the opportunity. I've been part of open interviews, and I can be really honest, I did not do an in-depth dive into the application. I kind of did a surface look to be able to create some custom questions. But beyond that, I wasn't really going all the way through. But in terms of another difference in the types of questions you might be asked with an open, since the interviewer has reviewed your application, you can expect some more custom questions, meaning, I see that you were involved in, can you tell me more about that? Or why did you choose to do this and that experience? So more specifically about what you've written and what you are showing through your application. Whereas blind, I would expect some more standard questions that all interviewees are being asked. So let's talk about preparing for your interview day. You really want to be prepared to be, for questions about anything. If you wrote about it, then be prepared to talk about it. So again, starting, be ready for your academic background, to talk about extracurriculars, to talk about employment, research, hobbies, what your views are on healthcare or social issues right now, and why you want to be in that profession. Be prepared for follow-ups. Even if it's a blind, they might ask you, can you expand on that, or can you clear that up? Again, to really get to the heart of what they want to learn about you. Know your application. So I'm going to ask you a question now. By the time you get an interview, how long do you think it's been since you saw your primary application? How much time is left? Several months, a few months potentially, right? So you're not going to remember everything. You spent months and months writing it, you submitted it, you put it aside, you worked on secondaries, you put it aside. So take a moment and review your primary application. Take a moment and review why you selected this school and what you wrote on secondaries, because you're not going to remember. There's so much detail that you spent months writing about. So brush up on it to avoid unsureness. Don't assume you're going to remember it, review it. So for example, many cycles ago, I had a young lady who post-interview came back to speak with me in tears. And she said, look, the interview was going really great, had a good rapport with the faculty interviewer. And he asked me about my research I had done my sophomore and junior year, but I've been out of school for 2 years. So it's been 4 years since, I started that research, and was asking me about protocols. And I panicked and I said, I don't remember. What do you think happened with her interview after that response? Think the interviewer was still excited?
No, it probably kind of turned it badly.
It did, unfortunately for her. So why the interviewer was so interested in this, and again, you may not know who your interviewer is, but they happen to be doing very similar research in medical school. And they were very curious about a specific protocol that this individual had done. And she just couldn't answer it. And while one might not think it's a big thing, because the faculty was so excited to meet her and get to know this and ask questions about this research that she had written about in her application, the interviewer was disappointed. And so is that going to be a commonality? Probably not. But the moral of the story is, if you wrote it, just brush up on it. Just brush up upon it for the school. In thinking about how you might respond to, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I want you to think about, examples and evidence from your past that demonstrate competency. So remember, we wrote with a competency-based application. We're going to speak from a competency-based application. So thinking of examples to fill in that speak to these competencies and attributes. Practice. I know that when I did a presentation, so I was accepted to do a presentation at this national conference. I was very excited. I know that either I talk too much, or I and hem and ha if I haven't practiced. I know in my head, I sound wonderful. I sound amazing. But getting those words out of my mouth and getting comfortable with the words, that's what practice means. Not just what you think you're going to say, but actually listen to yourself, feel yourself. How are you, emoting those words? How are you emphasizing different words? So I encourage you, record yourself and listen to it on your phone, on Zoom, on a anything. Ask your friends and family to listen to your responses or throw interview questions at you, just again, so you get comfortable listening to your own voice, talking about yourself. Learn everything about the school via their social media, their websites, their current students, any links that they have on their website. If you did when picking your schools and in writing secondaries, you did some research. Now's the time to do another deep dive. What's on their blog? What student life look like there? What support services do they have? What opportunities do they have? What makes you feel strongly that this is a good school for you? And then connect most of your answers back to the school or field if it makes sense. It won't always make sense. Many times it will. So connect it back when it makes sense, but really tell your story, answer the question, tie it to the school or medicine or whatever health field you're applying to when it makes sense. I'm going to pause there. Any questions before I move on? All right. So again, going back to doing your research. So if the school has something on their website, that means they want you to know about it. So click anything clickable. This is your opportunity to really see what makes this school unique. Regardless, you're going to be a veterinarian, a physician, a PA, a nurse, whatever you're applying to, no matter what school you go to. So why this school? What does this school offer you? How does this school fit with how you see yourself? How does this school fit with how you learn, how you're growing, how you plan to become a professional? But also in thinking about this in terms of fit, how do they help you as well? So, one of the questions many schools might ask is, medical school is going to be really tough. How do you know you're ready? How do you know you're prepared for the rigor? And in secondaries, this has been popping up a lot. But if you answer, I am a huge hiker, outdoors person. I hike, I kayak. This is really important to me. This is how I take care of myself so that I can really focus on school. But you apply to a school that's, say, downtown Chicago or in the middle of the country. How's that response going to fly? Does that fit? Does it sound like the school's going to be a good fit for you? No, you didn't do your homework. Now you may have to tweak your responses for different schools, but something as innocent seeming as that, how do you handle stress, could make it seem like you didn't do your research on a school. So you really want to address this fit. Brush up on current issues. That's really important. What's been going on in healthcare and in your specific profession. And that might be different. For vet med, it might be talking about, mass slaughtering, or that vet med has the highest suicide rates. Are you aware of this? It might be inequities that have come up because of COVID. But be aware of what's specific to your health field and how your health field is growing in different, online, virtually, how healthcare plans have changed, but be familiar. Be able to speak to why you're a good fit. Kind of talked about that already, but they want to know that you have very specific reasons for attending this school and that you're going to team well and collaborate well with the people there. And it is expected that you're going to have follow-up questions, but make sure they're good ones. And what do you think I mean by make sure it's a good one? What does that mean to you? So that's a good question, and I'm gonna circle back to that one in a second. But I want to ask you all to think about what do I mean when I say make sure when you're asking questions back of the interviewer, whether it be the faculty or the med student or vet student, depending on your field, what's a good question? What do I mean by that?
I guess more we're thinking like not to ask questions that you could easily like find on their website or things that make you look like you didn't do your research about like the programs they offer, or just kind of asking questions that you can like easily find on their website.
Thank you. That's what I was getting at. So it should be something that shows that you are really interested. When you're going to an interview, you're dating. The two of you are dating each other, right? They're trying to showcase themselves to you, and you're trying to showcase yourself. But you want to look at what, tells the interviewer, I'm really interested in this school. I'm enthusiastic. I'm excited, and I'm asking questions that give me some more depth. Thank you. How do they feel about the program if it's a current student? What would they change? What was different? When they got here, was the school what they expected? What is really exciting about their experience? What's been really challenging? Those are really good questions for med students or the professional students that you might meet. For faculty, ask them about what they teach and what they've seen, because they're usually going to be practitioners too. But have that in-depth, not the surface layer conversation, but faculty, research opportunities, access to internships, daily life, or anything that you would want to know when considering a program. I liken it to if someone from your high school came and said, why'd you pick Davis? What would be the things you'd want to share with them? This would be the same thing in talking with a med student or faculty, right? What is it that makes it unique? So try to create a dialogue, not so much of a Q&A. So you want to also include the interviewer instead of it question, answer. The best interviews are those that have been into a dialogue. But another thing that you might find happening is the interviewer, if it's a faculty, might take over and just start talking if you ask them a question. I've had this happen to many a candidate. And for the candidate, it's very nerve-wracking. They're like, I want to talk. I want you to know who I am. But the faculty hasn't stopped talking. I'm going to tell you this right now. You've already been successful in that interview. Whatever you did in those first few minutes, the interviewer liked you, was impressed by you, and they're so comfortable with you, they're just talking. It's happened to many people. It feels weird. It feels like, but they're not learning anything about me, but they just taken off talking. That's actually a good interview because they're so comfortable with you already. So just keep that in mind, that an interview that happens is not a bad interview. It's actually a good interview. So to your question of talking about current health issues, if it's important for you to ask, I don't want to take that away from you. If it helps you understand the school better, if it helps you understand student life better, then you should ask. But I would also be mindful of the school and their views. Big picture, depending on how they answer, that's not going to make you like the program, then do ask. If you're really trying to suss out this program's views or the people's views. So that's something that you consider in asking. But if it's really important for you to ask questions so that you can get a good feel of the school and their views, then ask it. But if it's just, and I don't like to use the word just, if it's asking to, for lack of a better word, sound important, no, we don't want to have a political discussion. That's not the time. An interview is not the time to inspire strong emotions. you don't want to take away from you. Other than the interviewer so excited to meet you, we don't want to take away from that. So it's a fine line. And if you want to talk more about it when you come to drop-ins, we can, but that's the approach I would take. If it's important to you, absolutely. If it's how you suss out that school, but beyond that, I would be cautious and aware of who the school is and what they might be thinking. But also, separate is if their answer impacts your decision about the school, then ask it. So these are just examples, but you can be asked many different varieties of questions. Some can be really wide open-ended, like the tell me about yourself, or tell me about a non-academic interest. We've been seeing these in secondaries. Some can be trying to get a sense of your maturity and self-awareness, difficult conversation with a team member. Can you tell me about a time, I think we've seen this in secondaries, that you didn't get what you wanted. Current issues. I'm sure, again, we can think of a lot of different things that are going on based on your health field. All the inequities COVID has revealed, the deficiencies in our healthcare system. Dedicated to the profession. Why do you want to do this? What do you think makes a good doctor? How do you see? Okay, slight misspelling, but how do you know you will still want to be this in 10 years? Personal and academic struggle. Why do you think, looking at this list here, any type of category surprise you, or you're wondering why that might be relevant? No? Okay. So someone was asking about the tenure question. So since someone brought that up, let's talk that out. 10 years. So if you are going, let's use medical school, for example. What's 10 years? 10 years in the big picture is only about 3 years after residency. So sometimes we have people, I've had applicants start talking about, oh, I'm going to be at this free clinic and I'm going to be establishing this foundation and I'm going to be doing all these things. And I'm like, whoa, let's back up. It's going to take you 4 years to get through medical school, 3 years to get through most residencies, depending on the specialty. So you're really barely going to be 3 years out of that. You're not doing all that. You are working crappy shifts, double shifts, back-to-back shifts, graveyard shifts, and trying to pay off your loans. But you can speak to maybe environment. I hope to be in a hospital that serves. I hope to be back in my hometown. I hope to be working towards this. And so that's part of maturity and awareness, to be aware of what your field or where you might actually be in 10 years. Not, 10 years seems like a long time, but after I told you that, it's not really that long. I know no one asked this, but I'm going to touch upon it. Why do you think schools might want to know about personal challenges? Why do you think that's relevant for an interview?
Because medical school is very challenging and you're definitely going to continue to face challenges. They want to see how you will handle those and if you can recuperate from something challenging.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's resilience. It's a combination of resilience, but also I've developed, and thank you, Soo Young, the coping mechanisms. I fell flat on my face. It happened. It's real. And I got myself back up and I created a structured plan. And that's something that will help me through future challenges. That's why they want to know. They don't want med school, dental school, vet school to be the first time you struggle. And they want to hear that you know how to create and how to get through it and how to get yourself through it and use your resources and ask for help, and utilize past challenges to help you get through a future challenge, whether it might be the rigor of school, or it might be you didn't get something you wanted while you were a graduate student, and how are you going to shake it off and keep going? So think about examples. Like I said a few slides ago, you don't want to be talking in generalizations, just like in all your writing, I statements, I, me, my. You don't want to, what I sometimes hear people say, well, it's really important that you consider, utilizing resources and how you would help yourself. What's wrong with what I just said? What's wrong with those two sentences? They sound good, but why might they not be strong in an interview? It's general. Yep. How about I try this? It's really important that I consider my resources and what options I have to help myself get myself out of the situation, and then be able to apply those to any future situations. One, the first example was you. I don't know who you are, who this general you is, but I brings it back to me. I own it. I'm applying it to myself. I'm saying I've learned, I'm applying, I'm understanding. And so you want to get very comfortable not going into this third person you that's disconnecting from the answer or disconnecting from the question, but to own it and bring it back to you. Does that make sense now? All right, we're going with a super quiet group today. All right, let's talk about presentation. Your attitude is everything. I am going to be honest. You have been judged in the first few minutes of your interview. And so walking into that interview, confidence versus insecurity, confidence versus ego, that first impression, being kind to everybody, even in a virtual interview, being appreciative, being kind, being genuinely interested, making sure your first impression matters, managing your anxiety. I know this is stressful. This is dictating, for all of you, what your next steps in life. You have been working so hard for this goal, and you need to work through the anxiety. I'm not saying tamp down on it. I'm not saying let it go. I'm not saying get over it. I'm saying work through it. It's okay to be nervous. When I interview, I actually talk about that pink elephant in the room. I'm nervous, but I'm so excited to be here today and share with you a little bit about myself and why I'm excited about this position, right? It's okay to be nervous. When the nerves exceed and prevent you from being your authentic self, from you making eye contact, from you holding yourself upright, that becomes a problem. So practice. Positive self-talk. Visualize yourself being successful at this. And again, work through that anxiety. Avoid slang and filler words. I have found that slang is generational and regional. My spouse is from the Deep South. Some of the words and expressions they use there, I have no clue what they're talking about. Acronyms, we want to avoid them. I've been with Davis for a very long time and I'm still learning acronyms. So again, avoid that. I know I've been umming here and there. A few ums are okay, but we want to either slow it down, so we're avoiding the ums and not using ums to, bridge the next thought. It's okay to stop and then keep going instead of using those filler words. Kindness goes a long way. It's really critical. You don't know what influence everybody you meet has on your success. Nonverbal communication, and again, we'll talk more about what that looks like in a virtual environment, but eye contact, facial expressions, body language, hand gestures, and fidgeting. I once had somebody in a mock interview do this for 45 minutes. I was literally staring at the pen, like sweating because it was driving me nuts. They didn't realize it. I'm a fidgeter. I've worked very hard to practice being still with my body. If you've noticed, I talk with both hands. I've worked very hard in an interview to have one hand on my lap. That's that tactile sensation, to keep one hand down and utilize my other hand as appropriately. I've worked very hard to maintain a good posture in a chair or when coming in and shaking hands. And practicing that. I've worked very hard. I'm a very petite person. I'm under 5 feet. Most chairs are too big for me. I've practiced. How do I, sit down so I don't have dangly feet and still look like an adult and a grown-up, right? All of this is practice. Walking into a room, this is where I sort of start demo. There's a difference between, hi, it's nice to meet you, or floundering, hi, thanks for having me today. We want to practice all that body language. It shouldn't be stiff shoulders back, but comfortably. I put one hand on the armrest. I still think that's professional. That way, again, that tactile sensation of not flailing during the interview. But record yourself, practice, see what you're like. You want to be careful. You're not doing that. You don't sit there and have fidgety pieces to yourself that no one's ever said to you because it hasn't been in a professional setting. So do a practice and record yourself and just see what comes out. You're going to be your worst critic. I'm going to tell you that. Look past that. Look past, how would I evaluate this person? What feedback would I give this person, and practice that. Practice that. Enunciate. I am a very fast talker by nature. I've worked really hard, just like with presentation, to slow down and speak no faster than I can say the words pronunciate or enunciate, where all the syllables are clear. Because when I get into a story, I am going in 3 different directions, the words start blurring together. That's not going to go well in an interview. That interviewer is going to feel like they've been machine gunned, right? So recognize those aspects about yourself, slow it down. My brother, on the other hand, speaks like this because he's so thoughtful. I lose my ever-loving mind. And so with him, I've had to practice just, it's okay to take I would rather he be quiet and take a moment to think and then speak when he's got a few words, few sentences together, rather than these huge pauses in between. So that's okay. It's okay to take some time. That's a great question. Let me take a few seconds. And I promise you, those few seconds are honestly just that. I have timed people in mock interviews. They felt like they were taking an eternity, a minute, and God, that was ruining the interview. honestly, it was 7 to 10 seconds most of the time to coherently put a thought together and then speak about it. Vicky, that's a great question. I'm actually going to talk about it a few slides down. So if you hang on to that thought, we've got 2 slides and I'm going to talk a little bit more about attire and presentation of you personally. But any questions on this before I move on? Anything that you want to clarify that surprised you, or I heard and I just want to know if it's okay. So anything before we move on? And again, there'll be time for questions once I finish the presentation as well, and I turn off the recording if that's something you're waiting for. All right, I'm going to keep going. So let's talk about content. How do I put together a coherent and cohesive thought? And so I'm sure you know of different acronyms out there: PAR, STAR, CAR. I personally use PARC, and this is a good tool for both behavioral types and possibly situational questions. But you want to back up your assertions with an example and with specific details. So with PARC, if you're asked a behavioral, can you tell me about a time when? And we're going to talk about that tomorrow, or sorry, Wednesday, when we talk about behavioral and situational questions. But to help you maintain a structure also helps the listener hear your answer. I'm a storyteller. I can easily interweave 3 or 4 stories together. My friends know me, they're okay with it. My spouse barely has the patience. He's like, can we just get to the point? I'm like, I'm getting there, get there. In an interview, we want to be a little more cohesive. And so to keep yourself from straying, from derailing, or taking different train stops, follow a process in your thinking. So with behavioral or situational, problem I faced briefly, actions I took. If you were part of a group, great, mention it, but come back to yourself. Be careful you don't go into the we form. We were charged with, and we did, and we did. That's great, I'm glad, but I don't know anything about you. I'm not learning anything about you. As part of the group, our charge was to, I was specifically tasked with results based on what you did. So what happened? What happened because of what you did, whether it was successful or not, because they might ask you a question related to a time of failure. And then what did I learn? Based on this, what did I learn? I realized that it's really important to do. And then if it's applicable, remember I said tie it back to the profession or school. There's PARCA, application to future circumstance. It could be in the future I would, or as a med student, it's really important that I'm aware, or as a future doctor, I know that it's important that I continue to do. So if it's important for the question, you can go with PARCA, problem I faced, action I took, results based on what I did, knowledge gained, and application. Or it could just be PARC and kind of end it with, you know, what I learned about myself that day was. Make sure you answer the question that was being asked. I'm going to emphasize that. Make sure you're answering the question that was being asked. Why do you think I'm emphasizing this?
It's really easy to go on tangents that might be related to the question, but don't necessarily answer the question directly. So it's better to just directly, answer the question immediately, or like, it should be like the first thing you say.
Thank you. The other thing, and thank you for those that responded in the chat. The other thing is you've been preparing yourself, right, for this interview. You've been practicing questions, you Googled questions, you looked them up, you practiced, and now you've been asked a question. What could easily happen is you're so focused on the answer you want to give that you dismiss the question that was asked. If I'm asking you, can you tell me about a time you failed, you weren't successful, you didn't get what you wanted? Do you think I'm asking you to turn it around into a success moment or a strength? I'm not. I'm not asking you to make this a winner-winner. I'm asking you to tell me when all heck broke loose and what happened. That's what I'm trying to learn about you. Maybe you've been practicing. So let's go with the why do you want to be a doctor? Or actually even broader, tell me about yourself. What do you think sometimes happens? People start telling me, not just tell me about yourself, they might start talking about why medicine, why they want to be a doctor, or why this school. Is that what I asked? No. That might be coming down the line. I'm really just wanting to get a general sense of who you are. They know, if it's an open interview, they've seen the application. They want to know who's behind it. So they want to get to know your personality and, behind those experiences. But again, I know you will be practicing very specific questions in the hopes that they might ask this. Answer the question that was asked. If you can weave components of what you've practiced in, great, but don't sidetrack yourself too, but this is what I want to tell you. That's not okay. I have sat through those interviews and I'm like, what? No, that's not what I've asked you. And I might ask you again, or I might just say, you're not paying attention, you're not listening, and just keep going. That doesn't bode well for yourself. Sweta, you're asking super good questions today. I'm gonna, actually, why don't we take a minute and talk about that? I have more of that on Wednesday when I talk about interview questions, but it is broad. It is very broad. And so, I talk about, so for those of you who, and again, I apologize if I'm focusing on the medicine application, but some of you might be doing autobiographies for some of your secondaries, and it's very broad. Now, I know the UCSD one does ask you to weave in medicine, but I would think about the tell me about yourself as a brief autobiography without the tell me about yourself or why medicine, unless that's what they're asking. So, I grew up in a small farming town. This was a little bit about my, under 18 experience. I was very excited to go to college. That was my first time away from home while I was in school. I was just shocked at the lack of diversity at the school that I was in, whatever that might lead to. I was really interested in certain experiences. That's what I got involved in. Outside of school and work, I'm also an avid baker. I love being outdoors. And that's a little bit about myself. I'm showing them my personality. I'm showing them who I am. So it is broad, but what I would do, just like an autobiography, think about 4 to 5 pieces of yourself and reveal that, share that with them, showcasing, again, some of your, not just competencies, but just who you are and why this is important. Be authentic. When I talk about baking, that's one of my hobbies outside of work. I am the family baker. I love making cakes for people, and it's really important to me that I know what they like. So I'm making this for them. That's my gift to them. I love the smell of baking in the kitchen. It's just a very homey experience and reminds me of cooking with my mom growing up. I love hiking. I have been camping since I was 8 years old, and it's something that I've continued on my own. Once my extended family got big, and they've all gone on to their own families, but it's something that I'm looking forward to sharing with my children in about 2 years. They're too young right now. So I'm giving you pieces of who I am. I'm showcasing, using my face, my body language, my interests to show you my interests, but that's it. That's a little bit about what they're just trying to get a feel for who you are. when that's the first question. Practice, practice, practice. There's no shortcut. I've had people come to me, I have an interview in 2 days and I haven't practiced. Why? Why? The day you decided to apply to professional school, you are revealing and practicing your writing and how you're talking about yourself. So keep that going. I know interviewing is scary and it's uncomfortable, but the whole point is for you to be able to gain that confidence in yourself and showcase who you are. So practice out loud, practice, your projection, practice, how do you sound in a small room or a large room? I've had people that talk really softly in general, and that's how they speak. And I'm like, I can't hear you. Or I've had people booming voices and that I'm like sliding my chair back because they're so overpowering. So practice enunciating and being comfortable with the words that you want to share. So you're eliminating those ums and hems and haws. If you noticed, I slowly transitioned to not umming. I, in fact, haven't ummed in the last few minutes because this is something I'm very passionate about and excited to speak about. And I've slowed myself down so that I can share this with you. So that's what the difference between practice. I'm not a natural speaker, but when it's something I'm confident in, I can show that. I can show that enthusiasm. I can emote. I'm very expressive. In fact, I have to sometimes tamp down on that because my face reveals everything that's going on in my head. So that's what I practice too. So let's talk about the interview day. And for Vicky, you asked about attire. So one, if for any reason you are going to an in-person interview, plan your day out. Let nothing be a surprise. How are you getting to the airport? How are you packing your interview attire? Are you carrying it on? Are you folding it? How are you getting to the hotel or your interview site? What are you doing with the luggage? How are you paying for everything? How, is there multiple things going on? Some schools have a reception in addition to their interview day. Is my footwear going to carry me through this? How am I eating? Right? I know I get very hangry. Some of my interviews have been 6 hours long. And yes, they do feed me, but I can't go more than an hour and a half, 2 hours without some sort of snack break. So, I might have in my little handbag that I'm carrying a bar or nuts or something to just give me a boost so I can keep going, because getting hangry is not okay during an interview. Avoid surprises, but attire. It's not about how expensive your clothes are. It should fit you. So dress professionally, groom meticulously, dress conservatively and classy. You honestly only need one interview thing that's going to take you through all the interviews. It's, again, I've gone to Macy's and on their sales rack, I've gotten an amazing suit for $35 because I bought it I bought it off season. And $35 is much better than $300 to $500 in my mind. Many places it might be a suit. It might also be a professional bottom, slacks, or a skirt with a conservative top. Try it on, walk around with it, sit down with it, stand up with it. If, the classic mistake, and I talk about this and I even made it, the last time I interviewed before this job was pre-kids at a completely different weight level and body shape level. And the weekend before my interview, I tried on my old suits. Oh boy, that was not okay. I was 2 years postpartum, had not lost that baby weight. I was not okay trying to squeeze into this. So I was at Macy's trying to buy something for an interview in 2 days. That's not a good place to be. That's not great for confidence. And I mentioned earlier, I'm petite. Nothing fits me. Everything has to be hemmed. And so I'm trying to find something that doesn't require a hemming, that's going to fit me, that's going to make me feel good about myself, that I can move, I can sit, I can stand, I'm not having to tug things down. So I would try all of that, but that's why I give you examples. Like one of the pictures has someone in a nice sweater with a button down top and a skirt. It's not a suit, but it's very conservative and classy. If you're interviewing, I can say the East Coast tends to be a little bit more conservative than us. I would wear a jacket if possible. I would wear a shirt and tie if possible, because they do tend to be a little bit more conservative than us West Coasters. But again, fit is more important. Conservative is important. If you want, Friday, if you're going to come to the mock interviews, try out your interview attire. I encourage you. If you're not sure, bring it to drop-ins. We'll take a look at it. I've had people show me their attire, walk around with it, sit down with it. That's what we're here for. But you really just need one item that you're comfortable with that's going to take you through all, any interviews that you might have. And that one item should be for you. Same thing with shoes. If it is in person, wear something that one is already broken in, that you can be on your feet 5, 6, 7 hours. I've had individuals wear super high heels, and I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Unless that's something you're very comfortable, you're very confident in, that you can do a school tour in, that you can walk, to a bus stop, a taxi stand, an Uber, wherever you might be, but be comfortable. That's really important. You may not get to hold a bag. There's no reason for you to have a phone, have your phone on you, but turn it all the way off. There's no reason your phone should be on. I usually say have a little something with maybe a $10 bill or a debit card and your phone. That's it. You might need to buy yourself a snack, or you may need to call, but it should be completely powered down. Phone, a few iPhones ago, became possessed. Even though I would silence it, it would unsilence itself because I've used that switch so many times. So it was my possessed phone. I now power things down or put it on airplane mode these days. But if it was something as important as an interview, I would power down. I would not take that chance. But to Vicky, does that help you? Business casual, both. Again, something that fits and inspires confidence in you. Hair, many of us a year or two ago started having COVID hair. I now make up a point. I'm comfortable enough. I get a haircut every few months just to tame this. If you wear makeup and you're comfortable with it, great. If you don't, this is not the time to start. Piercings often come up. I have a few piercings for the purpose of an interview. Depending on where I am, it's still an expression of who I am, but I might tame some of it down. I wear my hair colored. You might not see it as much these days, but I've had bright purple before for the last decade. I might wear it a little bit lighter, but I'm not going to take it out because that is my self-expression. That I love purple hair. I'm going to wear it. It's a piece of self-expression. Jewelry wise, today I happen to wear a jingly bracelet. I won't during an interview because one, it distracts me. I keep looking at it. I want to play with it. Same thing with jewelry. Just keep it minimal, not distracting. I remember I used to do the MMIs for Stanford Medical School. And I remember a young lady came in with these ginormous chandelier earrings. And I was just like, so sparkly. You don't want to distract your interviewer. Again, simple conservative is the best approach. And at the end of the day, believe in yourself. You got the interview. Hooray! So have that excitement, have that attitude, have that confidence. work through that anxiety. That's what's most important. And that is the end of today. So one, I am going to